let's get into some X-Men news. I'm super excited to talk about this one, man. Oh, I'm so excited. Anytime we get to talk about the X-Men, I am hyped up. So, we have here, and I guess let me just pull this up this way for you. We have reports from Jeff Snyder with regards to the X-Men reboot in the MCU, okay? Now, there's like a basic element here. There's like the main story, the main thing that Jeff is putting forward. And then there's a lot of little details that he drops in his newsletter, multiple aspects to this story. Let's dig in. And I will say, too, let me just say off the jump here. The X-Men thing, it's a massive deal. It's the next big thing for Marvel. It seems like it's something that they are cooking while they are finishing up Secret Wars. So it seems like right now, and Kevin Feige has spoken to this a little bit, it seems like right now they're building this crazy story in Secret Wars. But unlike what happened with Infinity War and Endgame, Feige also knows what the next big story is and how the events of Secret Wars will tie into that. That apparently all has to do with the mutants and the X-Men, okay? So that's kind of important context. I also want to say that a lot of things are happening with the X-Men right now. That is the reason that Jeff is getting this information. I think that that's real information, okay? But I also think that a lot of this could change, and we are in the early stages of this, okay? So I want to remind you about the crazy news cycle that was the Fantastic Four casting. I'm sure you remember, I remember, for over a year, we had all sorts of insiders, all sorts of people that report and scoop for Marvel were telling us all kinds of different names that were going to be cast for the Fantastic Four. And I think the reality is, looking back at that situation, Marvel knew the Fantastic Four was a super big deal, and they were working really hard on the casting. They were trying out a lot of people. They were coming up with really cool ideas, potentially even doing, readings with these different characters, maybe chemistry readings with Sue and Reed. And so because there was so much activity behind the scenes at Marvel, a lot of that activity made its way to us via rumors, speculation, scoops, things like that. I am saying all of that to say, take all of this with a massive grain of salt. And as we're going to get into a little bit later on, there are people like My Time to Shine Hello that is refuting these scoops from Jeff Snyder, okay? I happen to think Jeff is incredible. I think he has incredible sources, but I'm not convinced that he's 100% correct here. And even Jeff himself is reporting this as rumors. He's reporting this as stuff he is hearing. These are not exclusives that he is putting in the newsletter as like a big exclusive thing, like this is actually happening 100%. So with all of that context out of the way, let's now get into this news. Let's get drippy, droppy, sweaty as we speculate on what this could mean. What are the stories? What are they going to look like? Is Rogue going to be caked up? These are the important questions. So, major X-Men news. Jeff Snyder says last night in his newsletter that Julia Butters is being considered for the role of Kitty Pryde. Now, I have this photo right here. She's up in the upper left-hand corner. I don't know too much about her. She's super young, by the way. She's like 15 or 16 years old. And I think recently she's been cast in, for instance, I think she was like a really little girl in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for Tarantino. I think she's going to star in a new version of Freaky Friday. At least I think that's what was in Jeff's newsletter. She's just like young, up-and-coming actress. A lot of buzz around her. She's Jewish, which matters because Kitty's Jewish. So yeah, kind of interesting thing going on with Kitty Pryde. Now, this follows up on other rumors that Jeff has said. The first one several weeks ago was that Sadie Sink is being considered for the role of Jean Grey. And then he has said that Harris Dickinson is in the running for the role of Cyclops. Okay, so that's what Jeff is reporting as far as the casting is concerned. Now, there's a lot to get into within the casting, and then there's other stuff that Jeff says in his report too. So let's start with talking about how she's young. Okay? And I think she's the right age for what Kitty Pryde should be. And, you know, there's another report out there from Daniel that's saying that the members of this team are likely to be cast between age 20 and 30. Okay? And you might be like, well, wait a minute. She's like way younger. Does that contradict what Daniel said? Not exactly, because I think what Daniel's referring to is the established members of the team are going to probably be between 20 and 30. Okay? Kitty, however, being a lot younger, by the time this film comes out in 2027, she'll probably be 16, 17, maybe 18, you know, depending on when the movie actually comes out. But that's measurably younger than the rest of the entire cast. Now, the reason that is important is because Kitty is going to replace the character of Jubilee from like the old X-Men stuff, and especially if you remember the early episodes of the X-Men animated series. What do I mean by that? It means you'll have an established team of X-Men that have been working with Charles Xavier's, you know, they've sort of earned their stripes, they've been on multiple missions, and I think Kitty Pryde will likely be a new recruit to the team. And this is fun, man. And I think that the character of Kitty Pryde, if it ends up being Julia Butters, again, I'm not super familiar with her work, but her pedigree is obvious. She seems like a really good actress. Whoever they get for Kitty Pryde is going to be very important. That's a really important character because it's the kind of the character that the audiences can sort of vicariously live through as the adolescent that's going through all these changes and then finds about this team of mutants and is recruited. This is a really important aspect of the X-Men, right? Like, it's a school ultimately, right? Charles' school for gifted youngsters, and he brings on like a bunch of really young mutants and X-Men. Obviously, he has the actual X-Men team and the training and all that sort of stuff there too. But having a young recruit that is brought into this world of the X-Men is a tried and true formula. It has worked for multiple iterations of the X-Men. And so therefore, I think that Kitty is really important. And I think they're doing the right thing by going after really high pedigree actress for that role that is a lot younger than the others. Now, as far as the team themselves being in their 20s to 30s, I buy it, I believe it, and I think it works. It's interesting because there was another report from Daniel that suggested that we won't see an origin for the X-Men. That's kind of wild. Okay, that is kind of wild. I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around that because what that would mean is that the X-Men are potentially already out there in the MCU. And if they're out there, and you've got a Scotty Summers that's something like, let's say, 26 to 30 years old, because I think that's how old Harris is. I think he's 26. That would mean if he was recruited when he was 16, it would be 10 years ago in the MCU, which would mean that the X-Men, at least some version of the X-Men, has been established for over 10 years in Marvel, which is kind of wild. I mean, that would be interesting because we have not seen them at all. And there are a lot of theories as to what is going on with the X-Men in the 616, right? And, you know, there are some people that think, oh, well, maybe they've been around and Charles Xavier is just hiding the memory of them, kind of like a Hogwarts situation. I've heard this brought up a lot in the fandom. The X-Men could be here, they could be operating, and yet they're just starting to be known to us. They've been operating maybe in the shadows, or perhaps Professor X is wiping the memory of all these people. So that's potentially a part of it. I suppose the team itself could be just being formed around the time of like Doomsday and Secret Wars. Because if you think about it, with Adamantium first being introduced to the MCU like this year, all the way in, what was it? I guess in the MCU 2023. That's pretty wild. Doesn't seem like we could have a Wolverine in the MCU without Adamantium. Maybe Adamantium already existed and there was like another celestial event or something like that. But I'm basically trying, and maybe you can hear the gears inside my brain kind of clanking as we try to figure this out. What I'm trying to do is imagine a scenario in which the X-Men are established in the regular Marvel Cinematic Universe so that when we are done with Secret Wars, we are perhaps just back with them, like they're just an established thing. Because otherwise, they're going to have to explain, where does this team come from? Now, man, we're really on one. We're really on one here, and we're getting super sweaty and nerdy, so just hold on. Hold on. Let me take you through another thing that could be going on, which I think would be nuts. What if we're looking at the cast of X-Men that exist in a different universe? Walk with me on this. Technically, we are doing that with the Fantastic Four. We are experiencing a different universe, at the very least, a parallel Earth 2616, maybe the fifth dimension, Earth 1612. Who knows? Either way, that Earth does not seem to have other superheroes. That Earth has the Fantastic Four, and we believe that version of the Fantastic Four will be brought into the MCU proper via Doomsday and probably Secret Wars, and they'll also remain the Fantastic Four team in the MCU after the reboot. Okay, so we already know, at least rumored, that's the plan with the Fantastic Four. Well, why not do that with the X-Men? And technically, right, we know that we're going to get scenes with Kelsey Grammer as Beast and a Charles Xavier and Maria Rambeau and Monica Rambeau. They are all a part of the post-credit scene for the Marvels, and it's heavily rumored that we will see that post-credit scene paid off in Doomsday. And so the way I'm thinking about this news is like, there's really only two ways this could be going. Either on the one hand, there just is a younger team of X-Men that exists in the MCU. And they're already out there, and for whatever reason, they have not been around during like the Thanos event and all this other shit. Like maybe they were doing something else. They were really busy. I don't know. Maybe they're playing Warhammer. That's one option. The other option is that the X-Men team that we're going to see in Doomsday, that's connected to the universe with Kelsey Grammer Beast and the Marvels and all that, it is possible that that team is going to be introduced with these new young X-Men. And then perhaps after the MCU reboot, just like the Fantastic Four from that other universe is going to be brought into the MCU, maybe that's what they're going to do with this team of X-Men, because I'm super stuck on this idea of no origin. Right? Like, and the only way I can kind of make sense of it without an origin is either it's already going on and it was just hidden from all of us, or it's a part of a separate universe. So I wonder how you guys feel about that. You know, that's pretty crazy, because another thing that Jeff says in his newest newsletter is he continues to say that they might appear before the X-Men movie. Okay? So he continues to report that these casting decisions are happening right now, potentially because they're actually going to show up in Doomsday and Secret Wars. Now, that's really interesting. Let me skip all the way to the end where we have somebody like My Time to Shine saying that this shit isn't true, right? So I talked to My Time to Shine about this, and I said, what's your freaking deal? Why are you beefing with Jeff? And she was like, who's Jeff? And I was like, you know damn well. Point is, I was like, why don't you think this is real? You know, Jeff's really reliable, in some ways more reliable than you, Shine. Jeff not only shows his face on social media, he apparently was willing to show all sorts of different parts of his body, including his appendages. So, like, why should I trust you, Shine, over Jeff Snyder, who's willing to bear it all in the sense of his scoops and shit? You know what I mean? And I think where she's coming from is that it's too soon. I think she thinks it's too soon for discussions, too soon for these kind of casting choices, too soon. And that's even if the movie is going to shoot in 2026. and be ready for 2027. Okay? And part of the explanation here could be, if Jeff is right, it's because it's not just casting for the X-Men movie. And in fact, it's casting for Doomsday. This is potentially casting for a Russo brothers movie. And we have to remember that this is not uncommon. Spider-Man shows up in a Russo brothers movie before he shows up in his first solo MCU movie. Black Panther shows up in a Russo's movie before he then shows up in his own solo Marvel film. So it wouldn't be the craziest thing if these casting decisions are being made, and if the Russos have some kind of input, it's likely because it's actually for their films. Okay? And by the way, just to kind of take a step back from this whole situation, I thought it was so damn interesting that Jeff included this in his report last night. You know, with him saying that he believes this could be them before the X-Men movie, and with him saying that he continues to believe that the Russo brothers have input on this, I find that to be particularly interesting because if you've watched Jeff talk on the Hot Mic podcast, there were some questions as to whether or not that would actually be a thing. And in fact, there was a moment where he was confronted by John about this exact question with regards to the Russo brothers having input on the X-Men moving forward. And in the podcast initially, Jeff was very resistant to this. He was like, no, I don't think that's true. They can't direct that movie or whatever. They might have some input or whatever. And so I think it's interesting that he goes from that position to within the newsletter, just continuing to say that this might happen before the X-Men movie and the Russo brothers might have input. I'm absolutely certain that Jeff is in constant contact with certain people and sources, and he might be getting some context as he continues to report this stuff, and then he refines his reporting over time. What I mean to say is, like, if Jeff is correct, we're going to find out really soon because they're getting ready for Doomsday and Secret Wars right now. Jeff said in his newsletter he believes that we're going to get a ton of information about this soon, including probably who the director will be for this X-Men film. And he still thinks that this movie will go into production in 2026 and it's going to be ready for 2027, which, look, that's a W. Like, either way you slice it, that's a massive W because that means you begin the year of 2027 with Secret Wars, which is like, oh my God, it's going to be mind-blowing. By the way, we're still going to buy out a theater and do a big, like, event for all the fans and the Nerdvengers and everything. So I look forward to that. That's going to be really fun. We're all going to get together, experience Secret Wars together. Holy. But then that would mean, like, literally later that year, in the fall, we would experience X-Men. Guys, can you believe it? That's going to be ridiculous. To go from one of the biggest movies ever made, this incredibly ambitious thing, the close of the multiversal saga, the end to the story of RDJ's Doctor Doom, at least for now, and, the rebooted MCU. And then we go right back into the X-Men stuff. Oh, man, that's incredible. That is so much better than going from Endgame to Far From Home and to Black Widow and Eternals and Shang-Chi. Like, man, a big part of the reason that Phase 4 was so bad and felt so weird was because we just got, like, the biggest end cap, craziest end to several stories ever, and then it literally felt like filler. It felt like they didn't really know what the next story was. It felt like they didn't really know who the Avengers were, and I think that was a major misstep. So, dude, to go from Secret Wars right into X-Men stuff, like, my guys, like, 2027 is about to be fucking hype as hell, man. Going from fucking I can't believe it. Like, I'm getting super excited just thinking about it. I know it's 2 years away, but we're going to build so much in the next 2 years. We're going to do so much nerd-venging. We're going to look at all these rumors and leaks with a goddamn microscope, maybe a stethoscope, all kinds of scopes. Sniper scopes. We're gonna look at it all. And I'm so excited. Oh my God, the amount of nerd venging we'll do over the next 2 years. And then we're going to go see Secret Wars. And they better have an ambulance there because I might have a heart attack. I think that shit's going to be so goddamn epic. Oh, I can't wait. And to experience with all of you, it's going to be hype. And then we don't have years of meandering around. We don't have years of trying to figure out who the goddamn Avengers are. No, it's about the X-Men. Bam. We're right back in it, baby. Oh, I'm excited. So I think that's going to be really cool. Now, I have one more question with regards to the X-Men and the mutant stuff. And man, we just did so much on this report, right? We got real sweaty. We rolled up our sleeves and we rolled around in the mud with this thing. But there's one more question. One more concern. And frankly, it's a big freaking deal for me. What's the deal with Franklin Richards, man? Is he a mutant or not? Okay. You know, I saw some people on the Discord. They brought up something really interesting. One of the scoopers, I'm not super familiar with who it was. Comics Things shared it to me. Let's see here. Maybe I can find it. Divinity Seeker. That's who the scooper was. And I don't think Divinity Seeker has like an incredible track record. I don't normally talk about Divinity Seeker scoops. But one of the things he said was that it'll be confirmed that Franklin Richards is an Omega level mutant in the Fantastic Four movie. Okay? And guys, I can't think of a more perfect way to combine the craziness of the Fantastic Four with a new status for mutants and potentially the stuff that's going to happen in Secret Wars and Doomsday and then leading into the mutant saga. I think we need Franklin to be an Omega level mutant. And I hope that that's a big part of the plot and a big part of starting to build the mistrust for a lot of different characters when it comes to the mutants. So we don't even know if every character will remember Secret Wars when we're done with it and we go back into like the regular 616 canon. But I would expect some characters will. And it seems like Franklin Richards is being set up to do some crazy reality warping stuff, potentially be a big part of how they're able to fight against Doctor Doom. And I think he's also going to be used to reestablish the MCU, to bring back the 616. He's a part of the soft reboot. And I wonder if after that happens, if there will be a bunch of characters, maybe even the Celestials themselves, that view the mutants slightly differently now. And what if that's all because of Franklin Richards? That would be fascinating. So I'm really hopeful within this big report here for the X-Men. And at this time, when X-Men are on the horizon and we're getting so excited about how this story could take place, you look at a character like Franklin Richards, and man, there's just a lot of potential there. So I'm really, really hoping that they make Franklin Richards a mutant, that they make him an Omega level mutant, and that he's a big part of Secret Wars and Doomsday and setting up the status for mutants as we move forward. So a lot of exciting stuff. A lot of exciting stuff when it comes to the mutants, man. We went over a lot there. Thanks for watching. And if you like this clip, smash a like on the actual video and subscribe to this channel. That way more of these clips get into your feed. I've also linked the full episode below if you want to check out the entire thing, including the Q&A we do with fans. You can also watch this show live. We do it live Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And you can also find all of my content, including the videos I put on my main YouTube channel, on the podcast feed.